Okay, so now I have this object here, and I come down here and go to convert to editable poly, and then you can see when I go down here, convert to editable poly, I have this thing here, use NURMS subdivision, which if I check it, allows me to work with that object as if I had applied a mesh smooth operation to it. All right. Now that's a little bit different than if I have this object as just a box and I apply an edit poly modifier to it, which often I'll do, as I said a little bit ago. But if I go down here, I can see I don't have that option to view it as a use NURMS subdivision. Now I have this thing here which will apply a mesh smooth to it, but that's a little bit different in that right now I've actually increased the number of faces to this thing, and so it applies the same kind of smoothing, but I've increased the complexity of my object that I want to work with, and that may not be the best way to work with this thing. So again, you can apply mesh smooth to it. You can apply it ceaselessly here. So I can really smooth the heck out of it. But now all of a sudden I have a ton of geometry that I need to work with. And it makes it a little bit cumbersome and kind of in a way defeats the purpose of using a subdivision surface like this. So we'll see that in a sec. So now I'm going to take that edit poly off, go back to my original box here. And what I'm going to do is, as I did before, I'm going to convert to editable poly. Converting to editable poly, I come down here and I can use NURMS subdivision. And that way, when I do that, what I can do is I can still pick faces, but I'm picking individual ones that correspond to the original object, which is now serving as what's called a cage. So this original object had a certain number of polys, and I'm still able to pick those polys as whole big blocks instead of this actually gets sort of subdivided into 8 or 24 or 32 or however many polys. I can work with these things as entire blocks. I can pick them and I can move them around and change the shape of that object, and I don't have to worry about all those hundreds of little polys in there. And this is a great way to work with complex smooth geometry because it allows you to have a far simpler number of control points, control meshes to work with. And so you have a couple here. You have isoline display. If you toggle isoline display, what that's doing is isoline display is only drawing the lines that correspond to the original, what's called a cage. So this cage is essentially my original object. Remember, it was a box. Now if I can choose to show or not show that original cage. And then if I uncheck isoline display, and if I increase the number of iterations, it's displaying all the polys that this thing is going to eventually tessellate to. But if I click on isoline display, then yes, it's that many polys and that it's nice and smooth, but it doesn't have, and in fact when you click on one of the polys, it'll actually show you the individual faces in there. But it's a nice simplified result, so either way. But normally, leave isolane on. I normally show the cage, unless sometimes the cage can, this is a simple object, so it doesn't really, get in the way. Sometimes the cage can get in the way, so I'll choose not to show that. But what's really cool about this is it allows me to work with this, a very smooth object, as a simple set of larger pieces. And I can apply all the poly tools that I have. So I can do stuff like I can take this bit and I can, let's say I bevel it. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to bevel that in and scale that in. And then I can use my scale tool and scale that up just a touch, move that over. And I have a smooth object. It's very smooth, lots of polys, but I don't have to work with each one on an individual basis. And even allow me to do some of those other tricks I showed you a second ago. So if we do pick these polys here, and we can do a slice plane, and that way I'll do like this, and slice and turn that off. Now I have some extra geometry there that I can work with. So I can work with those as edges, and you see when you do a slice like that, if you pick the edge sub-object mode, it conveniently picks that edge for you. And you can see I can pick it manually there, that way, by dragging and then holding down Alt and subtracting my selection. It's a good way to pick a row, but sometimes it's a little bit harder. So you have what's called ring and loop selection types. So if I pick this here and I pick a ring, it's going to pick all the contiguous edges around that are parallel to it. And if I pick a loop, it's going to pick all the edges that are connected end to end. So that's a convenient way to pick edges that have a relationship to each other. Not all edges can be picked that way. Only if the model is nice and clean. Now, so I can take this and move this around, and then I could potentially scale that up, let's say. And then I can pick that, loop that, move that in, and add detail to that this way. And we'll do the same for this. So pick that, loop it, move that in, maybe even scale that down. You refine the shape this way.